Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today at Engineers Without Borders UK for the second of our virtual panel discussions that we are facilitating to discuss and learn some of the most pressing matters within the engineering sector today. We hope to use these opportunities to inspire, enable, and influence the engineering community and provide you with some actions you can take away and put into practice within your own working life. So my name is Nav Soni. Nav actually means new in Punjabi, and I'm a member elected trustee of Engineers Without Borders UK. And I'm so delighted today to be joined by three amazingly fantastic people who are going to help us explore our discussion topic today and learn about what can be done to address such an important issue. And to be honest, I've been looking forward to this all week. I've been talking to my friends, my family, my work colleagues, and it seems to have captured the imagination and the talking points of everyone that I've come across this week. So for the next hour, we'll be exploring racism and engineering and the stories behind this that lie behind the statistics. For example, we will look to explore the stories that explain why 27% of the UK engineering graduates that come from BAME backgrounds, but only 7.8% of engineering professionals are from BAME backgrounds. So where is that disconnect? Why is it that more people are studying but not then going into engineering professionals from BAME backgrounds? And why a recent report showed that 65.5% of white engineering and technology graduates found full-time employment after 6 months of graduation, compared to 48.6% of graduates from ethnic minority backgrounds. We will be exploring these issues, but also looking at who engineering and design technology serves most because of this, and how does that affect it. We'll also be fielding your questions from home. You can pose your questions in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. We want this to be as interactive as possible. We want to hear from you, and we want you at home, wherever you are in the world today, to be involved in this discussion. So please, please, please do send in your questions through the Q&A box. And I'm really, really, really excited about this. We've had over 220 people sign up from all over the world. So why this topic specifically? As an organization, we want to inspire, engage, and influence the sector so that engineering serves all peoples, regardless of gender, creed, sexuality, social class, disability, or race. In response to the Black Lives Matter protests at the beginning of June this year, we, like millions of others across the globe, published a statement in solidarity on the ongoing fight against systemic racism. We are committed to delivering on our promise and taking steps internally to explore what this means for our organization. And as a member of the board, I take this really personally as well. I remember exactly when that statement went out, and I messaged our CEO saying how proud I am, but that we need to take action. And this is the action that we're starting to take. Engineers Without Borders UK are not experts in this field, but we wanted to use these panel discussions as an opportunity to learn from those who are and develop as an organization so that we can help be the change that we need to see in the world. We also recognize that it's not just a question of what we are doing as an organization, but it's imperative for us to assess the engineering sector more broadly and acknowledge that there is a lack of diversity that still exists. We want to try and understand what is causing this disparity by learning from the experts and active members in this field. With this in mind, I'd like to introduce you to our three wonderful panelists. I'm going to start with our first one, which is Dr. Udonna Okeke. He's a senior lecturer in engineering management and a program manager for aerospace engineering at the Department of Engineering, Design and Mathematics at University of West England. Shout out to the aerospace engineers. I studied aerospace engineering. He's the founder of the BAME Girls in Engineering project, which aims to encourage and inspire 12 to 14-year-olds through visits to local engineering and technology employers and by offering mentoring from BAME women. Give us a wave, Udonna.
Hello, hi everyone, good to have you on board.
Our second panelist is Georgia Thompson. Georgia is a civil engineer by background, currently working at BAM Natal as a design coordinator. She has been part of some amazing campaigns to improve diversity in engineering. And these are including WISE, Women's Engineering Society, Open Data Institute, Chain Events, STEM Amazing, and ICE. Amongst these campaigns, Georgia has co-founded the organization D-vers-ty, spelled D-vers-ty, who are an organization that strives to improve the inclusion of diverse groups in engineering and technology industries. Amazing. Give us a wave, Georgia.
Hey, hi everyone, and great to be here today.
Thank you very much. Our third and final panelist, Mara Makoni. Wow. Mara is a systems engineer with a wealth of international experience and over 10 years of professional experience. Mara is the external relations lead at the Associations for Black Minority Ethnic Engineers, UK, an organization that provides support and promotes higher achievements in education and engineering, particularly among students and professionals from ethnic minority backgrounds. Give us a wave, Mara. Welcome to you all, and thank you for being part of our panel. We're really excited to have you a part of this. Thank you so much. I'd like to start this discussion by inviting each member of our panel today to give us a few introductory words and their perspectives of some of the stats I've just shared with you. Let's start off with Mara.
Sorry, I had to come in, to come off mute. No, but firstly, thank you very much, Nab and Jamie. This is, you know, it's just, as Prince Williams, as Prince Harry said it, these are uncomfortable discussions that really have to be made. This is the time we have to make them. This is not a moment; it's a movement in itself, and we really applaud your position in being able to start and kick off and being brave enough to have these discussions. Way of introduction, I primarily stand here as a executive board member for AFBE UK, and you know, we've been around for over 13 years, and we've done so much. We've pretty much been, you know, I like to call us one of the leading voices in diversity inclusion topics, primarily in the engineering sector, because we have done it and we've seen it all. We have a lot of initiatives behind us, which has primarily looking at attraction and retention, primarily within the BME sector. I've been with them for 2 years, and I've literally just been in awe of some of the work that was initially founded by Nikki and Ollie Follian, Nikki heading the UK part and Ollie heading the Scotland branch. To tell you what I think about where I stand at the moment, I woke up today thinking this was going to be a great discussion, but unfortunately I've just been so upset, like literally so upset this morning, because we put out one of our initiatives, which is Making Engineering Hot, an initiative that is around empowering 12 to 18-year-olds, because we identified that one of the things that puts off students studying STEM, and over a third of students studying STEM, was the lack of role models. So part of the foundations of our actual project was to actually really put out a program out there that looked at empowering students to actually be so informed, but to have visibility of, you know, engineers, and to have that sort of connection with engineering industry, with work from our corporate sponsors, So we put out we have a crowdfunding page for all of this. And one of the things that upsets me is we live in a world where somebody puts on our post that, is there, first of all, the first comment was, is there a disadvantaged white kids 12 to 18, or is this just a racist thing? These are comments that people still put in a social domain, or they should stick to selling drugs and mugging. So this is put on social media. So this is why people will tell me that we don't have a race issue. So I'm like, oh, here we go. We can, literally, I was just like, I was having a good day. Literally, the first 2 hours of my morning until you see these, there were so many more comments around it. It's like people can still make blatantly racist comments around this. So, which is why, my introduction will be just saved to, we are really appreciative of we can have these conversations. It is important. And if anyone is sitting out there thinking, well, everything is okay out there, it is not, because some of us have to wake up to this. This is a program for kids. We did this for just bringing students and empowering them and giving them a voice and literally giving them a platform for them to actually see what we're doing in engineering and to bring them into engineering. And people write racist things like they should stick to thugging and mugging. And it's like, well, here we are. So that's my introduction.
And yes, social media adds a whole nother dimension to this whole thing, doesn't it? Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Mara. Appreciate that a lot. Let's go to Georgia.
Hi. So, I think based on kind of what you've said, when we look at the stats and we look at the percentages, it kind of shows that a third of engineering students are from a BAME background. However, there's obviously a massive disconnect with their ability to actually secure engineering jobs. And I do think that is to do, you could probably look at other factors, other industries, but we need to there isn't enough data to establish as to why there's such a massive drop-off. Engineering is, classed across the world as an amazing profession, which obviously I think it is as well, but there appears to be a barrier to entry into the workplace. And I do also think when you look at the stats about BAME and BME, that doesn't necessarily mean it's quote unquote people of colour. It can also mean white other. So that could be people from other European countries, that could be people from America, Canada, even Irish people are considered as BAME. So when we look at the data and we look at the stats, we really need to start to look at breaking it down as to what kind of percentages that means. Engineering UK every year produces their data, and it did show that in the most recent report that 7.5% of engineers out of the BAME figures are from a Black background. But when you look at students, that is a lot higher. So I feel like there is definitely a barrier to entry. And then also look at engineering broader, and we look at the workplace and the amount of people from an ethnic minority background in even just senior management, let alone executive or board positions, there's just not any representation. So as someone like myself who's more early into their careers, I have to really look and think, or, people that are early into careers need to think, is this a place for me? There's not that many people above me who say follow in their footsteps. Or more so when I look at it, I think, why isn't it? Why did they leave? Why aren't they present? Did they not get the progression opportunities, development opportunities that they needed? And I think there's obviously a lot of different factors that goes into it. But for me, visibility in the workplace, to be able to see that progression and to see, okay, I'm not special, everyone can do it. But when you are the only one, there can be, sometimes a bit of self-doubt, or, is this space not for me? Am I to this or am I to that? I also think, social class comes into it as well, which can be more barriers to just getting on with your colleagues. So being able to relate to them, people from different backgrounds obviously find it harder to relate and interact. And if there's no what's the word, incentive or encouragement to actually interact with people that are different from you and to find that relationship, then it is harder for people to feel comfortable at work. So when you don't feel comfortable, you don't produce your best work.
Yeah, it's almost, you remind me of something. It's like, it's almost, you feel like you're an imposter. It's an imposter syndrome. You don't feel like you belong to this place.
Yeah, so you
Yeah, so
concentrate more on why, oh my gosh, like
yeah.
what's happening, rather than just being yourself, going to work, doing a good job, going home.
Yeah, wow. Okay, thank you, Georgia. And I'm really looking forward to kind of unpacking those key kind of themes and key metrics that you were talking about. Then, thank you, Dr. Okeke. Over to you.
Right.
Initial reaction so far.
Thank you very much for letting me be part of this panel. Well, as a way of introduction, though you've introduced me, but I'm Dr. Okeke, and I'm a senior lecturer in engineering management. My academic, although my academic qualification and doctoral degree focuses on project and strategic management, I'm a bit more passionate about motivating, inspiring, and equipping BAME girls, with the appropriate information and knowledge that, would lay the foundation for them to make a better choice in their career. And there's a story behind this, my passion. As you did introduce, I have a project that I'm currently running called the BAME Girls in Engineering Community. It's a platform that I'm currently using to promote more diverse group of engineers. It focuses on new cadre of, girls and women from Black, Asian, and minority group. And the aim is to help them, to provide the right information for them to have the better understanding and knowledge in terms of deciding their career path. The project is currently being done in Bristol, and it has provided a great opportunity for me to have one-on-one interaction with these people, to understand what the problem is all about. I mean, there are lots of statistics out there, and my interaction with these young people have got me to understand what the problem is actually. I think it's a grassroots problem. And until we start looking at the problem of lack of BAME community in engineering field or addressing the problem from the grassroots, I don't think we're going to make headway. And I'm saying this because I have one-on-one, experience with these young people. And when you talk to them, the kind of things they tell you, inspires you the more, it motivates you the more. I give you an example and why I think there is so much and huge gap. It's about mentorship. When you speak to these young people, they tell you about their background. They tell you about what their moms and their dads do, which happens to be their immediate, mentors. They tell you that they are, they classify the kind of career paths they are into, and to them, that's the career paths they want to go to. And some of them that end up going to school, they get into school and they are not able to finish well. In the academic field, we call it attainment gap, and which is the gap that shows the difference between high achievers and low achievers. And there's also a problem that surrounds this. When you look at it from the grassroots, some of these people came from the poor background. They are going to school. Some of them are struggling being in school and at the same time trying to support their family. And in the course of doing this, some of them end up dropping out. And that's why we have huge attainment gap. And because we have huge attainment gap, you have, larger number of people from the white community, for example, being in engineering field. And I think it's very important we start finding a way to address this issue of attainment gap. I'll give you some statistics that will surprise you. In 2015-2016, the gap was largest here in England, for example, where 78.8% of white qualifiers receive a first. There are only about 63% of BAME, people from the BAME community that achieve first. And this is about 15.6 gap. Like Georgia did mention, if you break this down, of course, the Chinese students, they have about 72% attainment, achievement, and Indian students have about 70.7, Pakistani students have about 61.8, whereas the Black community, we have just barely 50.5%. percent of achievement, and this is horrible. And I tell you why this is happening. This is because some of these guys, they are in school, because I teach them as well. They go to school, some of them, they have to pay bills, they have to support their parents. And because they don't have the right mentorship platform that helps them and support them to make the right decision, most of them would decide rather to go and work for Tesco. I'm not saying that it's not good to work for Tesco. You know, they rather decide to go and work for us that to earn money to support their family. And doing that makes it difficult for them to focus on their engineering program and engineering courses. At the end of the day, they end up achieving second class lower. They end up achieving, you know, 2-2-2-1. And that's the starting point for getting an employment in an engineering field. And when this happens, it puts them behind. So I think, and that's why I think, you know, this conversation needs to be happening. We need to be talking more. We need to be finding a way to solve the problem from the grassroots. You know, Mara did mention about mentorship and all of that. We need to open our hearts to finding a way to mentor young people, because I mean the issue of racism, lower number of BAME community in engineering field, you know, according to research, has been there for decades. And we can't continue to be talking and talking and talking. And that's what my project is trying to achieve. I work with Georgia as well. They're also doing tremendously with their diversity project as well. We need to start helping these young people. We need to start finding a way to mentor them, you know, to give them the right pathway, to give them the right information. I'm not saying that they shouldn't work to support their family. Yeah, they can work to support their family, but we need to tell them that we need people like them in the engineering field. You know, one of the our partners, Rolls-Royce, they gave us opportunity to bring in young people. I took some students, about 35 of them or so, to Rolls-Royce, young girls, you know, to go and see what it means to work in an engineering field. And they were quite surprised. Some of these girls, when you talk to them, you ask them what do they want to be, they tell you that they want to own a taxi company. I'm not saying that it's not good to be an entrepreneur, to own a taxi company, but the problem is that this is what they know, this is what their parents are doing, you know, and it can be quite challenging. The world is evolving, the world is changing, there are lots of innovation, you know, activities happening there. We need to start talking to them, and that's why I'm so passionate about platform like this, that will give us the opportunity to talk to the people, to help them to understand the need for them to, you know, be more focused in ensuring that they finish their engineering programs, because there are massive and huge opportunities out there. And I keep on telling people, United Kingdom is a land of opportunity. I know racism is there, there's no doubt about it, but this country, there's a land, it's a land of opportunity, and we have to help these young people to be able to realize that they can still, you know, find their place in this society.
Yeah, wow, Dr. Okeke. You know, what you're talking about is really important, and the fact that it's happening with students from a very young age, at the beginning of their kind of, you know, even before their professional careers, you know, then, you know, the statistics show that they're not attaining well, so therefore, you know, the opportunities are limited because of that, and because of their surroundings, they've had to earn more in other unrelated fields to engineering. So it's about kind of how do we kind of tap into those people that you're mentioning. Okay, wow. So I have a question for you guys, and I'd love to start with Mara on this one, and then I'd love to hear the others. A 2018 report, okay, found that only 8.1% of men and women working in the engineering sector were from Black and minority ethnic groups. How has engineering allowed itself to be in this position? And what are the effects of this lack of diversity on engineering design and the output of engineering?
That's a loaded question. I mean,
it's not a light topic, you know.
I mean, for us, like I said, we've done this for 13 years. Where one of the things that we did, so case study, we do the entire life cycle. So we do the entire value chain. So you don't just start at, you know, maybe at university. Then we started right at the bottom. And one of the things we've actually even understood is introspective, because we have a reach of over 1,000 engineers. So we look inside, we reflect, and we talk to our members and stuff. Even understanding, like, even within the BME spectrum, there are 25 lived experiences in there. The experiences of a first-generation immigrant and a second-generation immigrant, those will be two completely different experiences. And the actual decision-making process that goes on at the grassroots, like Dr. Okeke was saying, will be very different. So one of the things that we do, especially for Making Engineering Hot, is we target programs that actually include a community. So it's a community-based, I like to call it a community-based initiative, because we involve the parents. Case an example, when I was explaining to my grandmother I'm going to be a systems engineer, I gave up. I just literally said, you know what, I work on a motorway. Yeah. And then she came back and she said, but once you get run over, and that was the problem again. But the effect that the parents have on student making decisions, which has been highlighted. So we've worked with that. So we have had programs like, I know we had like Making Engineering Hot, or sort of transition programs with some of our university partnerships, like UCL. I mean, we've recently got on, the likes of Oxford University and all that. But it's really targeting it at community level. Like, how do we get even the advisors, the career advisors, to understand the intricacies of BAME, those barriers to inclusion for BAME students? So how do we inform them? How do we use our position as one of the leading voices in the D&I space to actually inform them? Like, if you're going to advise students that you work with in your schools, how do you do it so that you get to make sure that everyone that is involved in making this decision around what subject is choosing STEM, for instance, is affected? So it's really understanding that it really starts at the bottom. And even at university level, some of these issues that students face, again, it really comes down to, like Georgie was talking about, it comes down to visibility. I can't be what I cannot see. And really starting to think, how do we, so one of our programs that we run is Transition. So it's about preparing students for that first encounter with that, with an assessment center. So you were talking again about, these students had, some of the compromising, some of the things that compromise, somebody has had to work at Tesco and all that stuff. But this is the first time they're walking into an office at, say, McDonald's, and this is the first time they're being told to be in a role play exercise. How do you comfortably prepare them for that moment? But also, how do we work with university institutions for them to understand some of those barriers that even deter students from applying to, say, Lancaster University all the way up north? Understanding the intricacies of culture. So if I've come into a country, my mom might not speak English, so she might need me in the house to be the person that helps her to do the groceries because of that language barrier. So therefore, I'm not going to apply to a university that's all the way up north, even though I'm a highly achieving student. So it's really understanding some of these barriers to inclusion and how you talk through that entire life cycle. From the point at which somebody might actually even be empowered to make a decision about what I want to do. Do I want to do STEM? Yes or no? But do you make that decision for yourself, or is it based, like Dr. Okeke said, on other influencing factors? So we start to influence those different barriers of that. And then once you're in engineering, what makes you stay? And these are the things that Georgie was saying, like, it is really about that visibility representation. And we do that. We have things like real projects again. But this is really born out of, we have had 13 years to really learn this. And in itself, it has been, it has been accumulating all the evidence and using our 1,000 or so members to really, come to that position of really understanding these are the lived experiences people have. And it starts from, like I said, having my experience, because I arrived in England 17, 18 years ago, will be very different to somebody who's actually from BME, but actually arrived three generations, their parents arrived 3 generations ago, and somebody who, is loosely connected, or somebody who landed to do their masters, and that was the beginning of their journey. And they're only here to perhaps gain the right professional experience before they bring it back to their country. And even helping countries, our members actually understand that there's certain ways, like, if you're from a certain country, you might have actually a disposition to liking a certain strand of engineering better, because so say you're from Nigeria, you might like oil and gas because that is the predominant field in that country. So it's really about wanting to be open to understand these very intricate details about the BAME experience along the entire life cycle of it, because they are very little minor things. And until we get to a point where people want to be open enough to have transparent enough to publish statistics. I mean, these numbers that we're talking about, even I stand back and like, but who's measured them? Because there's just a lot of reluctance about even understanding what these numbers mean. Who is publishing them and who actually understands whether they're the actual reflection of where we sit in the, you know, somebody has said 8.1 or 8.3%, but it's who knows what these numbers are. So there has to be context behind this. Who knows what these numbers are, who's measuring them? So until we decide that we want to actually really make it a focal point to measure and to understand the experiences that come behind these numbers, because I will say personally, I'm not about the numbers. And I've said this to you now, that I'm really not about the number. The number to me is not important, because what you risk doing is you just only, we would look back at, because of Black Lives Matter, everybody would just hire the Black engineer.
It's so true.
For example. But then what then happens is we'll have 16% of, you know, so that number will be 16%, but the culture in engineering is still horrible, you know, for those BAME students. So for me, it doesn't make sense to just have, let's have 16% engineers, but what you need to do is you need to get your house in order before you open the door. You need to get your house in order before you open the door to invite guests. So you've got to get the cultures right. You've got to understand these very minor points of detail before you just make it about, you know, let's just make sure that each time we hire. That's important, and that we will not, that doesn't detract from the conversation, but I think the important part is the culture has to be right, because we just invite people into an systemically racist household.
So you could almost like feed the pipeline with as many BAME engineers as possible, but if they're not feeling welcome as they step in on their first day,
we'll all just be told like, well, you know, we made it great for you guys. You know, we made it great for you guys. You know, we invited you all into our home, but you know, get your house in order first. Like, really understand these things, because what you want, especially from a retention perspective, is to make it a welcoming home. Because you don't just feed the pipeline and just get it. And I do agree, the most important thing is the visibility. Get the mentors in. Let's all help. Let put the face of engineering to the student who's on the ground, who's possibly, and we have had this in our programs, in our initiatives, where I've never met an engineer. We have had people, even when we run Transitions program, which is a program that we run to prepare students, running mock assessments and all that stuff to prepare students to get into the engineering world, where people will be like, I was the only Black student in my class. We've got to put the face of engineering. We've got to make it more welcoming. We've got to, you know, we've got to do what we can. And one of the things that we do, for instance, in AFBE, and one of our positions is around, yes, we want to call companies to be accountable for representation. You know, we want. So when it comes to data, I want to know who's sitting in my board and why I don't know a director beyond. I don't know a director, you know, why I wouldn't know a director in my engineering company that employs over 5,000 people who's Black. That would be a concern to me. So let's get the house in order first. Let's continue to drive reporting on the statistics, but as Dr. Okeke said, we have been doing this for so long. We've been talking through these statistics for so long. There are other things we now actually have to break them down in more context a bit more.
Okay. Yeah. Dr. Okeke, you had your hand up, please.
Yeah, I was looking for the button to raise my hand. I mean, I just want to challenge Mara's argument around numbers. I think we cannot overemphasize the importance of numbers, because to a layman, that's what makes us understand what is happening. Majority of us might not have time to start looking at these statistics, but when they are published, it kind of gives us an idea of what is happening. And for me, it's a big motivation. You know, I was just looking at the charts page, and someone was asking about our experience. I tell you something, in my class, I think I did share it with some of you. I teach about 250 students, project management. Okay, one of the modules that I used to teach. And getting into my class, I had less than 10 BAME, less than women in engineering. Let me not say even BAME, less than 10 women in my class, 250 class. And out of that 10, you have less than 3, let me say 3 from the BAME community. It's disturbing. And that's what really motivated me, because I mean, it's a national problem. Nobody's going to solve this problem. It's all of us seated here that's going to solve this problem. And we will only solve it when we begin to take action.
Yeah.
So that's why I say number is very, very critical.
Well,
It's very.
I do agree. No, I absolutely agree that the number is important. But the point is, a lot of the reporting we've done is that 8% figure. But how do we get, because my position, especially in this context of where we are, this whole movement is, we need to be clear what we're asking for. We've got a figure. Okay, that's fine. We appreciate it. And quite less as the question has been framed, but how do we push it forward?
Yeah, I'd like to.
We might get to a point where, yes, of course, we will double the number, but it could be a horrible experience. We just need to challenge the institutions that are working a bit more. Like, don't just make it a tick box exercise.
Yes, I like that point, and that's one of the actions we need to take. Currently, most of the action that is being put in place to fight this issue of discrepancies around BAME community and engineering is the fact, most times from the student perspective, most of these organizations, in particular universities, we tend to put our focus, of action on students, which shouldn't be. And I quite agree with what she said. It has to be kind of an institutional change. There has to be a cultural change, okay, from the institutional point of view. But the problem is that we cannot sit down and be waiting for institution to take this action. When we start acting, I give you an example. When I started my project, I wrote my proposal and I shared my idea with my head of department. She was quite happy. She said, whatever money you need, I am here to support you. That's one of the ways we can take them to make institutions to begin to take action. It's only when we start taking action that institution can realize that, wow, something has to happen. So it's very important we start streamlining our project, our activities in such a way that it will create practical experience and practical opportunities for young people. Why I'm saying this is because as I currently work with these young people, generally when you talk to them, and Mara, I don't know how much about, I know about the AF, is the AFB organization, but I don't know much about the project you are currently doing. But Georgia, who I happen to work with, when you speak with these young people, the kind of things they tell you will baffle you. For example, in one or two or three of my conversation with them, you ask them who as an engineer, they tell you engineers are dirty people. And that's wrong. That's a very wrong perspective. And you cannot blame them. Most of them, their parents migrated to this country as a result of what we call hustling. They came here to hustle. And that's the mindset that these young people have coming from Africa, Jamaica, that engineers are dirty people. No, that's not the problem. Engineers are not dirty people. Engineers are people that create things like aeroplane, and that's why we took them to places like Rolls-Royce National Composite Center here in Bristol, for them to understand that to be an engineer, you do not need to be dirty. So my point is that number is important, and we need to start taking personal action. We need to start doing mentorship. And I want to put out a challenge here. If you're an engineer listening to me, I want you to I want to put out this challenge that what I called one engineer, one mentee. One engineer, one mentee. What do you have as an engineer? What have you learned? What is your experience? Pick up one person in your community and begin to mentor them. Begin to tell them that if you as someone from the Black and ethnic minority group can succeed as an engineer in the United Kingdom, you can do it. If 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 of us begins to do this from now, the numbers can double. Tremendous thing can happen to the number. So number is important. Individual action is very important, and the institution cannot take action until we begin to, put in practical action that would help young people, to understand the need for them to become engineers. I think Georgia wants to say something. I don't know.
Just to kind of wrap up.
I just wanted to quickly bring Georgia in. I saw you nodding furiously there. Being one of the most recent graduates with 5 or so years of experience in the area, I wanted you to kind of talk about the recruitment process. How did you find entering into engineering, and what kind of barriers did you face?
I don't know in terms of actual barriers. I mean, I think there's a lot of different perspectives in communities. You have, you know, the Black British perspective, and when you look at the stats, Black British students are heavily underrepresented in every single area of engineering. And you know, I was born here, my mum was born here, like you know, my family's been here for a number of generations, and I think it all starts with education. The lack of education around people from a black background, and even, you know, Asian and other ethnic minorities, is quite low. But that process actually into the workplace, I don't think there's enough opportunities before you get into the workplace to, you know, go on placements, for example. You know, often they're, you know, quite far, or, you know, you don't really know anyone. I think engineering, much like other industries, is all about who you know. So the less people from an ethnic minority in the workplace, the less people that you know. You know, if someone was like, oh, you know, I want to come and do a placement, you know, I'll go and, you know, with BAM and try and organize something. But because there's not a lot of visibility, there's not a lot of people from ethnic minority in the workplace, that's how I think it's allowed for it to continue to be a who you know club. I think there's a lot of emphasis and change in terms of the women and getting more women, and there's been, you know, targeted agendas in focusing on encouraging women, you know, get women into the board. You know, there's a massive focus on allowing women to be at every level of the business and to highlight their excellence. And I think a similar thing needs to be done for people from ethnic minority backgrounds. I think when I went for my jobs, you know, I applied for loads of jobs. I didn't really know what I was applying for. I just applied. But when I got in there, you know, I haven't necessarily felt consciously any barriers to my progression. But again, I'm still early in my career. A lot of people tend to drop out of the workplace within the first 5 years, people, either women, people from ethnic minorities. And those are the people that we need to target, we need to keep, so that we allow them to progress. You know, we don't just want to pick someone up and say, oh yeah, go and be the CEO of this company. There's enough people with, if they have the right support, the right development and the right investment in their careers, you know, we don't necessarily, we're not like, so we're talking about the attainment gap before. It's not like Black people are any less smart than white people or Asian people. It's the fact that we have the right support, and there is a little bit of preferential treatment, call it discrimination, call it unconscious bias, which affects our abilities to be seen as, you know, strong, important people within the workplace. And there was one more other thing I wanted to touch on, is what you said about how does this happen, and talk about design. Having a conversation with a friend called Penny, and you know, she was speaking to me about the fact that you know, as able-bodied people, in essence, we've discriminated against people because there's stairs everywhere. So until you know, you're in a wheelchair, there's stairs everywhere. You know, it's very difficult to get around. The other thing she mentioned is that there's cycle routes to businesses and workplace or offices, but there isn't cycle routes to childcare, for example. You know, why is that? And then again, as you know, the engineering industry is predominantly white, who are you designing for? Has there been enough, you know, emphasis in terms of transport, urban design on the people in those societies that are actually benefiting from the design of the engineers and the stuff that we design? I don't know if there's enough thought into, you know, the different perspectives that people might get when designing things for our communities.
So it's a kind of more inclusive approach that we need to even
to like public consultations, you know. How much effort do we as engineers go into those communities to try and interact with the people that we're designing for? Or do we just think our own perspective? You know, we design for things all over the world, you know, even just designing something that's like in Birmingham, for example. Never been to Birmingham, but I'll be there designing something for there, not understanding how people use it in the first place, to understand, like, just example, you know, when we're doing like new lift shafts at stations, we just walk up, look, you know, go back to the design, but we don't know how people operate. We don't know if there's a central part that people prefer to access the station from, etc. And not being able to, that's just an example, but yeah.
We are quickly running out of time. So yeah, I wanted to keep the next one a bit brief, so to bring everyone in. Is training and education enough? And are businesses doing enough to retain BME talent? And I'm opening this up to all three of you. Who wants to go first? Yeah, Georgie, you go first.
But I think the simple short answer is no. I don't think transparency around development and training is very clear. A lot of people sometimes you have to really fight to go on this course or fight to do that. Why does there have to be a fight? It should be very transparent how people are selected for not just promotions, but for training and development. It should be a clear process that is the same for everybody, no matter what your background is, and no matter what your relationship with your bosses or your manager is. Everyone should be invested in by their company equally, because I think it all comes down to training and development, because everyone has the ability to strengthen their strengths. If we know what people are good at, they should continue to strengthen that and be the best in that. And everyone has a responsibility to invest in development of people. That's what I'd say.
Thank you very much, Georgia. Mara, very briefly, please.
I agree with points that were raised earlier on. Again, that when it comes to training and development, we all know that things like mentoring and things like, we have worked with our professional institution members, helping them understand why the route to chartership is actually significant and important. One of the things they report to us is, well, we've got a problem with BAME men actually not pursuing chartership route. So one of the things that we also do is we actually do a lot of mentoring. We provide mentorship as part of, when you sign up, you provide mentorship for people to actually understand the road to being to being chartered, because that's a significant milestone in an engineering career that cannot be that should not be understated. And the second thing is, like, yes, training is not enough in itself. Therefore, we try to offer those sort of mentoring and just the visibility around even chartership and visibility around. We bring some of these high thought leaders, some of these high achieving BAME people in industry, and we showcase them in some of our events. So, somebody will come and talk about some big project that they're working on, whether it's decommissioning a nuclear project and stuff, and put that visibility. Because one of the things that is actually, as Georgia said, that is missing in industry is that transparency against career progression levels. So that is not always clear. And it leaves a lot of people who perhaps have felt a bit discriminated in other parts of life outside the workplace, thinking, well, I don't get a promotion, it's because I'm Black. So it allows career progression has been one of those places where corporates have failed to really be transparent about it. And that is significant for a lot of people, largely because a lot of people who have feelings of discrimination suddenly feel this has actually been the reason they've not progressed. And of course, I mean, the last thing is any of the training that, if anybody is to tell me that unconscious bias training that you sit on for an hour in a company is everything you need to solve your biases in life, that's just the biggest myth. Because as far as I'm concerned, I think they should even publish everyone who fails for the first time, because I think it tells us all, if you're there failing your unconscious bias training at work at the first time, I think you owe it to yourself to be reading a book or two about, how to eliminate this. So I think, yes, there's training and development, but mentoring is important, which is why a focal part of what we do is we around mentoring and really working with students and early professionals to start thinking seriously about that chartership route. So it's not just, listening to talk, is literally hands-on, literally mentoring and forcing. I mean, my mentor has literally been sitting, and if she's on the call, I'm usually ashamed to say this, but she's literally been sitting on me like, get mentor, get chartered.
I wanted to finish on this last question, and I'm going to open it up to everyone.
I have a comment.
We've had a lot of questions.
Okay.
Dr. Okeke, please, very briefly, very briefly.
Okay, I'll just leverage on what Georgia and Mara have said. And what I want to ask, Mara did mention an important point. She said her mentor. And I'm sure Georgia also has a mentor. And I have a mentor, okay? And that's why I think, yes, training and development is key, it's very critical. But what happens most time is theory. We end up, putting theory into people's head. I think there has to be more pragmatic approach to this. As I said, I did put out a challenge there. However, every organization's listening to us here. You have to create that platform, from the strategic position of the organization. I mean, for organizations, we are more careful to create the double bottom line, make it a strategic objective. I feel, and that's one of things that my university is currently doing. I think that the issue of tackling the problem of poor representation of BAME in the engineering field has to be part of the strategic objective of every organization. That has to happen. And not just to put it as part of the strategic objective in terms of theorizing a document and putting out there, but rather mapping out a task force that with defined plans and activities that will make it to become a reality. Again, mentorship, we cannot overemphasize it. If, let's say, for example, my vice chancellor picks up 1 or 2, 3 people from the BME community and mentor them, give them 30 minutes every week or even every month, don't you think their life will not be the same? If my head of department picks up 1 or 2 people and give them 30 minutes of their time every year, sharing whether they are black or they are white, but now focusing more on what has helped them to become successful, don't you think we can close this gap? So it's not about, I'm in the education sector. Yeah, we need to train. However, I feel a more pragmatic, practical approach, it's more much needed than training and development.
Yeah. I think that's really important. And all 3 of you guys have mentioned mentorship as a kind of key to kind of the development aspect of this. And we've had I'm going to open up to the questions now. We've had a question about mentorship and this topic, which is a question from Liz. She says, I agree with the power of mentoring. We have been looking at setting up a BAME mentoring scheme within our department. Have you got any advice on identifying mentors? And what are the key features and approaches to mentorship? And I'd like to add, I really think mentors are really important and integral in my life as well. So yeah, Georgia, please, if you could begin.
I think the best mentors, programs are great. I do think that the connection is quite important. So some of the, I've had a lot of different mentors over the time, some formal, some a bit more informal. But I think what's more important than mentorship is sponsorship. So once you're actually in the company, identifying those people who are advocating for you and making opportunities for you, and it all comes down to personal connections. As difficult as it is, I think you have to be able to go out and do an element, find your own mentors, because if someone can see something in you that they think is valuable, then they will advocate for you and invest in you. And I think you have to identify somebody. They don't have to necessarily be from a BAME background, but someone that you say, you know what, I would like your job in 5 years or 10 years, and then speak to them, work out what kind of things they had to do. Things, obviously everyone's journey is different, but being able to connect with people like in that position that you want, I think that organic process is, for me, has worked out more beneficial.
Yeah, Mara.
I totally agree. I've always been of the perspective that you need 2 people in your life, your sponsor and your mentor. Your sponsor is the person who stands for your career or your job when decisions are being made and you're not in the room. So that is a very critical person in any organization to work. Have somebody has your interests at heart, so that if somebody is slacking you off in a corner or saying that, they will stand for your integrity and will also find opportunities for you and do that. Mentoring is important to understand that even as a BAME person, you need somebody who's walked in the shoes that you seek to walk in life. So you need that person who's going to fight for making you understand understand some of these barriers to inclusion. So when is it that this is a thing that's happening to you because if it's a commonly felt BAME experience? So one of the things that we also do is like the roundtable discussions under the Chatham House rules, where we all sit there and we literally air our problems. Like this happened to me. It's really finding mentorship is important, because the road that you will walk in your career, in your job, and in your career, and I didn't use the word job because I think a career is grand. A job is what you do to your company. Career is who you are for the next 50 years. Finding somebody who will let you walk that path as easily as possible, and to identify any of the hurdles that come across is much more important than just standing back and walking it alone. So it's very influential. And I always say to everybody, especially within BAME or as a female in engineering, that each time you go up, ask yourself who else has come up as a result of me helping them. Sometimes it's not enough to be invited. Sometimes it's not enough to be invited to the table. You also want a voice at the table. You don't just get invited to a table. Have a voice at the table, because sometimes it's easy to just condense it as I'm part of the in crowd, but when you look back on your career, the most important thing you have to answer and be accountable for, knowing how hard it was to get there, is who else's road have I made easier because of the fights or because of the fight that I've pursued. So it's not just being a mentor. It's just actually I'm really looking back and thinking, who else's life have I helped, or who else, when I stepped up, who else stepped up as well. So whenever you step up, who else is stepping, is also, So as you rise, somebody else must rise up every time in your career, without a doubt.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mara. We've actually, sorry, Dr. Okeke, if you wanted to say something. We've actually run out of time, unfortunately. I don't know about you.
Well, I just summarize in 30 seconds. I think we cannot overemphasize the importance of mentorship. As I put out the question there, Mara has benefited from mentorship. Georgia has also, and I'm currently benefiting. And I will close up with this practical example. There was this job I was so passionate about. I wanted to go for it. And I went to have a chat with my mentor, and I said to him, I think I'm qualified for this job. And he said to me, no, to you are qualified to go for this job, but I think you need to go for something much higher. And I was like, no, I think this is the best for me. And I listened to him, and when the right job came for me, I went for it and I got it. And this is a practical example. If I hadn't gone to the mentor to ask him that question, I might have gone for that job, and he might have taken me into the right direction of my career journey. And that's why I think it's very important. And I'll still repeat my challenge. If you are an engineer here and you think you are achieving success, I want to ask you, please, look out within your community, pick up one person or two people and create time to mentor them. The environment is tough, of course. However, if we have people that can pat people at their back and encourage them when the journey is tough, they would definitely do well, and we will end up closing this gap number that that has been there for decades. So I want to encourage everyone. I want to encourage organizations, create the platform for people to be mentored, top executive, look out for people in the middle level of the organization, people at the bottom part of the organization, create a mentorship opportunity for these people. And I think we all can, make great impact if we take this issue as personal issues. Thank you. time is up.
Just sorry,
Yeah.
it's sorry, Daph, you're about to kill me, but shameless statement here. But no, but if mentorship is something that anybody on the call is considering, as part of, as an AFB member, we do actually have a right. We do assign you a mentor. We do assign you a mentor. Like it's our organization. So our organization stems from having corporate members, but individual members. So wherever you are in your career, we've got people in influential positions, very high up, to early careers as well, and students as well. But we do, even if you're an institution, academic institution, we do assign mentors within our organization. So you can choose whether you want, if you're a student, you want somebody who's just had 2 years of engineering experience, or you want to actually be mentored by some senior director in a company. And also we do assign mentors. So we've got that facility to it. It's something that we hold at the core of our organization.
It's really really good to hear that there are organizations like the things that we've just discussed that are helping facilitate these mentorship programs. Yeah. Thank you so much. I am so sad that this is coming to end. As you could tell, we could we could talk about this for much of the day. Thank you so much to Georgia, Mara, and Dr. Okeke for being amazing panelists. Please, everyone, join me in virtually applauding them and for giving us their time today. And thank you so much for tuning in, submitting your questions. Sorry we didn't get to them all. We'd love to take what you've heard today and challenge yourselves to be the person in the room that is consistently asking, are we including the right voices in this room right now? Representation really matters, and how can we better engineer for people, with people, and be really truly inclusive.